Any questions? I see some familiar faces as we've been talking, so welcome back to you and welcome to the newcomers as we explore the Buddhist perspective to our big question of 2021, what is the purpose of life? Thank you always to Susie Cole, President of the Interfaith Council of Rossmore, and to the Big Questions Committee, Channing Miller, Gloria Sunshine, and Ruth Ahern. And Will, we so much appreciate your dedication to helping with these Zoom things. I think you told me sometimes you do, 5 or 6 Zoom calls a day. Is that what you said? 4 or 5?
Every day is different.
I see. You do a lot.
Yep.
Yeah. And thank you to Channel 28 for recording this. It will be put on the Rossmore Channel 28 in a couple of months. So far this year, we have heard from representatives of Nanda, it's Paramahansa Yogananda, and Islam, Baha'i, and Sufism. And there's a variety of answers to the question of life's purpose, some of which are woven throughout all of the religions, which we call the golden threads. One of these golden threads is service. Here's what we've learned from the earlier presentations this year. For Ananda, Paramahansa Yogananda, the purpose of life is to cultivate the inner life, become more conscious and self-realized, and to serve. From Islam, to be aware of divine grace, to be a mirror of the invisible, to love and to serve. In the Baha'i Path, we heard about the importance of working toward the unity and equality of all peoples and to serve. For the Sufis, to know self with a capital S and also to know oneself, to know God, and to serve. When the committee chose purpose of life as the big question for this year, it seemed to be just one question. However, we are finding that this big question is turning out to have many sub questions. For example, what is the purpose of your individual life? What is the purpose of your life at a certain stage in your life? At one stage, it might be to start a fire. At another stage, it might be to put out a fire. When one is healthy, the purpose of life might be to live as fully as possible and intensely as possible. As one becomes elderly or illness sets in, the purpose of life might be to get well or to let go of life. So what is the purpose of government? What is the purpose of the universe? What are the general purposes of all life? So you see what I mean, that the one big question, what is the purpose of life, seems to turn into many different questions. It is said that there are as many religions as there are individuals. Well, perhaps there are as many purposes of life as there are individuals. Marcus Aurelius wrote 1800 years ago, man must be arched and buttressed from within, else the temple wavers in the dust. And from Ralph Waldo Emerson, the purpose of life is not to be happy. It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference, that you have lived and lived well. So now we are privileged to hear the Buddhist perspective on this big question, the purpose of life. It is my pleasure to introduce our representative of Buddhism, Robin Caton. Am I saying that right, Robin? Caton? Okay, you're muted, Robin. Robin holds a JD, lawyer, from University of Michigan, where she was editor-in-chief of the Law Review and an MFA in creative writing from St. Mary's College of California. Now that's an interesting combination. She practiced law for many years with a large firm in San Francisco, where she became the first woman partner, all right, in 1983. In 1990, Robin left law practice to write and teach at the college level. A few years later, she began a few years later, she discovered the teachings of Tibetan Buddhism and began serious study of the Dharma, first at the Nyingma Institute in Berkeley, and then under the direction of the founder of the Institute, the Venerable Tartang Tulku Rinpoche. In 2010, Rinpoche asked Robin and her husband, Kurt, to become the first directors of a new school in downtown Berkeley, Dharma College. Robin served as director of Dharma College for 7 years and continues to teach there as a senior instructor. From 2014 until the pandemic in spring of 2020, she has also taught a weekly class here in Rossmore. Robin's published works include a volume of poetry, The Color of Dusk. I'd love to read that, Robin. I'm going to have to get a copy of it because I love a dusk. And it's a beautiful, beautiful time of the day with a gloaming. I wonder if you use that in your book, your poetry, gloaming at the time of dusk. Anyway, here let us present Robin Caton. Welcome, Robin. Good to have you on.
Thank you so much. And I'm really delighted to be back with lots of Rossmore friends and new Rossmore people. I'm actually at Rossmore today because I live in Lafayette, but we were having a power outage on our block. And so I had to quickly make a plan to come to Rossmore and use somebody's generously offered an apartment here. So I am right here, right with you. And it would be nice to see you all in person again, but I also share the tremendous gratitude and appreciation for Zoom because we could not have made it through this last year and a half without at least being able to see each other. I was not favorably inclined toward technology, but I am a believer now. And one of the things that it does allow you to do, apart from the fact that I can wear my jeans on the bottom and a nice shirt on the top, is to have people who are at a distance, who are farther away. And that is awfully nice. So if you're traveling or even an international audience might be able to join. So that's my 2 cents about Zoom. I think it's with us to stay on some level, and that's probably a good thing. I expect there'll be other further technologies that will do even more to make us feel like we're in the same space as Zoom in the future. I really loved the introduction from Sarah and the little summary of what has come before in terms of these talks. I do have to disabuse you right away of one notion. I cannot speak for Buddhism. And I will say just a word or two about that. There are many ways to practice and to think about the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Buddha we call the Buddha, that we know of now in this age. And he was a teacher. He lived and taught in northern India 2,000 years ago, more than that. And his teachings spread over time to many different Asian countries and were included in many different cultures. And as happens when that happens, there are many, many different interpretations and practices and levels of teachings and ways of teachings. So I cannot claim to speak by any means for all of them. I want to tell you a little bit about the Buddha's first teachings for some of you who might not know about that. And from that derive some ideas about purpose, the purpose of our life, the purpose of our being here, the purpose of the way we manifest ourselves together on earth in this realm. And then I want to talk a little bit about my teacher, Tarteng Tulku, whose teachings have been very influential for me, and I think have helped me understand this question in a certain context. Sarah's absolutely right. This is an overwhelmingly big question. We started thinking about it, all of us, didn't we, when we were, what, 12, 13? It's been with us ever since. We don't usually talk about it with our friends, which is very interesting. You know, we get together and we say, oh my God, I love your shirt, or where did you just get your nails done? But we don't really say, so what are you thinking today about what's the purpose of life? Kind of a shame, you know, because maybe if we did do that or have been doing that for all these years, we'd be even wiser than we are now at our age in some way. We learn so much from each other. But the question, even though we're not talking about it, seems deeply embedded in what it means to be human. And what it means to be human seems to be an inquiry into knowledge. And once you're inquiring into knowledge, you're inquiring into meaning. You're inquiring into purpose. You're inquiring about what matters, what's important. As we grow and age, we make choices. It's as simple as that. Life requires that of us. We all grow, we all learn. We don't stay children as much as we might want to or like to, or feel that other people are still very childish. We see that all of us, we mature. It's a natural process. Our mind matures, our body matures. And with that maturity, we learn, we grow. Our senses, our mental capacity all develop, and experience teaches us, and books and culture and other people teach us. And through that whole process, which you could say is our life, our growth and our maturity, our movement from a child's mind to an adult's mind, all of that carries with it the underlying question: what is the purpose? What matters? Where do I make meaning? How does this work for me? And sometimes we get very despairing. We think, well, there is no purpose. We think things are random. We talk about luck. We talk about bad luck and good luck. We talk about synchronicity as though it's some kind of magical, you know, coming together out of the sky. And we forget that we have been on a journey to find meaning for ourselves from the time we were small. So part of the beauty of this question that's been asked by Sarah and this committee is to allow us once again to bring it to the forefront, not to keep it buried or hidden inside of us, but to allow it to come forward and to simmer more and to stew a little bit more. So I'm very pleased that we'll be able to address this. I'll talk for a little while longer and then open the floor to questions, and we'll have more of a discussion about it. But to come back to the teachings of the Buddha, you all probably know a little bit about his life story and how he was a very wealthy prince, son of a great king, and left home to discover for himself really what mattered, how to stop suffering in the world. When he encountered for the first time as a young man the fact that there was suffering in the world because he had been so pampered, he immediately felt that he had to do something about it. And he understood that before he could do something about it, he needed to understand what brought suffering about and to try to put an end to it. And he followed what in his day was a very ordinary path to do that. He found some spiritual teachers in the community in India, and he followed their teachings. And he felt after a while studying with each of them, this isn't working. It's not really helpful. And he did many different things, including starving himself and all kinds of spiritual activity that was common for the day. But he felt he wasn't getting an answer to the question of how to end suffering. And eventually he moved in a different direction, and that is he moved inward, and he sat down under what we now know of as called the Bodhi tree, a Bodhi tree, particular kind of tree in India. And he said, I'm not going to get up until I know the answer to this. And he had a very long and very difficult night. He was tempted in many different ways. In so many ways, these stories are very similar to other religions and other religious stories. And when the morning came, he felt, and he declared for himself, now I know, now I do know. It's been revealed to me. I've had a revelation, and now I do know the answer to what I was searching for. But even so, at that point, and so we call that enlightenment. That's our word. That's our Western word. We might say awakening. We might say knowing. We might say, again, revealing. But the word that's typically been used has been enlightenment. It's not necessarily, by the way, the best translation of the event, but it'll do. So he arose enlightened, and at that point, he actually said to himself, now I know the answer to how to stop suffering in the world, but it's so complicated, or it's so unlike what everybody around me thinks it is, that I can't even talk about it. There's nothing I can't even. And so he was going to just stay silent, and that was going to be it. And the story is that the Brahma and the Hindu gods brought him to heaven and begged him and said, you need to teach. You need to go and share. There are at least a few people who will be able to understand what you have to say. And even if only a few people understand, that will be good, that will be helpful. And from that point, the Buddha then taught, and he taught for many, many years. He walked and he taught, and he had disciples and students of many different kinds, and he taught many different teachings at many different levels. But just to begin with what's called the very first turning of the wheel of Dharma, the very first teaching. The Buddha taught Four Noble Truths, what's called Four Noble Truths. First, that there is suffering. Now that seems obvious, but sometimes we don't realize that we too are suffering, that all of us have kinds of suffering in our experience. We look out at others and we say, they're suffering. Obviously, they're suffering. They don't have food. They don't have clothing. They don't have a job. I'm doing pretty well. I'm okay. But this truth of suffering is a truth for all of us, every single one of us. Every single one of us has a core, a place within us where we're hurting, where our hearts are hurting. Sometimes our bodies are hurting, but even if our bodies are feeling fine, we feel lost, we're confused, we don't know what to do. We don't know how to find the answers to things. We lose our patience, we lose our temper, we say things we didn't mean to say. We don't know how to control our responsiveness, our way of speaking. All of that is part of suffering, levels of suffering. And then, of course, we age. We all know that, all of us in this group. We know we've lost a certain sharpness. We've lost a certain physical ability to do things that we used to do. All of this is included in this basic statement of the first noble truth, that in this realm, in our world, our earth, there is suffering. Animals are suffering. They feel it. We are suffering. We feel it. If we're really honest, if we take away all the veils of, well, I shouldn't be suffering, we have to say, I am. I am. And that is the first place, the place from which in the Buddhist teachings, everything else begins, everything manifests. Because if we can really, really touch our own space of suffering, we know we have just learned something incredibly important about our growth and our maturity. We have learned what it is to be a human being, to be on this earth. We have learned what other people feel. We have learned that we're not so special, any one of us. We're just all the same. This is universal. And we've learned there's something very important that needs to be changed. And that's our suffering. We need to use it in some way. We need to make value out of it in some way. So first there's suffering. And next, there's a cause for suffering. Suffering is not random. It's not bad luck in the Buddhist teachings. It's not, oh, this just happened to me because. There's a cause for that suffering, and we need to explore that cause. That's the next place where our ability to learn, our ability to grow, our ability to mature can find a purpose. And that is to understand, what's the cause of this? Why do I lose my temper? Why am I unable to focus, and there's so much distraction. And this isn't just a question of, oh, I'm old, or oh, my brain is doing it. It's an underlying question of, how does the mind work? How does experience come to me? How does perception operate within my experience? Why is it that I can have a really great intention and then I can't follow it through? I really want to help, but something throws me off. I get distracted. I get uncomfortable. What is it about this self, this human self, this ego self, that keeps me coming back to wanting to take care of myself first? And then what does that mean to take care of myself? So there are a whole cluster of questions. Sarah began by saying you ask one question and then you get 1,000 questions. And this is true. This is really the heart of the Buddhist teachings. You have one question, one thing you think you know, and then it leads to many, many more questions. And so you start looking more closely. Oh, I have a mind, I have a brain, I have a body, I'm breathing, I have a heart. I can explore with just that. I have a language. I have the capacity to communicate. That's a miracle. I can use that to explore all of these questions. Maybe I won't find the ultimate answer, but my exploration will be helpful. Maybe it'll be helpful for me. Maybe it'll be helpful for other people. I can share what I know, what I've learned. I can touch someone. I can touch myself with healing. And so, second noble truth, I want to find the cause of this suffering that's so pervasive on so many different layers. Third noble truth, the Buddha taught, there's an end to suffering. It can end. It isn't necessary. It isn't inevitable. It can end. Now we look around and we say, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it can end. I look at everybody and nobody seems like they really have put a total end to suffering. But then again, we can start looking at the lives of great saints, of great people, whether it's Jesus, whether it's Buddha, whether it's anyone else, and we can say, well, they seem to have found an end. They seem to have found a kind of inner space of peace, of harmony, of bliss, whatever you want to call it. And we can relate to, yes, it seems possible. These are just humans. The Buddha, too, he taught, I'm just a person, just like all the rest of you, just like everyone. And we have the capacity. This suffering can end. Now we know the suffering of hunger can end by feeding people. We know the suffering of not having enough clothing when it's cold can end by giving people warmth. There are all different ways to end suffering. What about this inner suffering, my emotional suffering, my sense of grief, my sense of loneliness? That too can end. And the fourth noble truth, there's a path to the end of suffering. That is to say, it's not just random that it ends. It's not just good luck or bad luck. There's actually something we can do. There's a path we can walk. There's a way we can go. And we can explore the suffering. We can explore the causes of the suffering, and then we can explore the path that we need to take Sometimes when you walk a path, you walk very slowly. It's very steep. There are a lot of obstacles. And maybe when we start out, we're feeling rather weak. I know if I haven't walked for a while, I can't climb hills very easily. My muscles aren't very strong. My heart isn't very strong. I have to go very slowly. Take one step. The next day, maybe I take 2 steps. The next day, maybe 3 steps. So sometimes when we walk the path, it's very slow. And other times we actually find ourselves being able to run and leap and joyously move forward. That isn't necessarily going to last. And then we go more slowly again. Sometimes we go backwards on the path. We kind of fall down a little bit. And sometimes we go forward again, more with more energy and more energetically. So basic teaching, first level teaching that the Buddha gave, there's suffering. We need to look at it, not ignore it, not pretend it's not there. It doesn't work. Just on a very practical level within ourselves, it doesn't work. It always shows through. Other people pick it up. We see it. We know it's there. We have to really look at it, not judge it, not say, oh, I shouldn't be suffering because other people are suffering worse. Just look at it. Just examine it. Just be honest about it. 2, there's a cause. Sometimes it's very confusing what that cause might be. Sometimes we say, oh, it's because of my parents, or it's because of my culture, or it's because of something. Those things play in, but if we're really, really, really honest, we see it's much bigger than that. There's much more to look at. My parents too had parents, and they had parents, and they had parents. My culture had a prehistory and a prehistory. We could go back forever pointing fingers, but maybe we have to look inside ourselves and say, okay, why aren't I ready to give up? I'm not a child anymore. I'm an adult. I don't need my parents' patterns and habits. Why haven't I given it up? How can I give it up? What do I need to do to give it up? Why don't I want to give it up? Maybe I'm holding on to it for some reason that I'm not being very honest about. So there's a whole path there. There's a whole path of inner work, of study, of outer work to see what's going on with other people, inside ourselves, to see what's going on inside ourselves. And little by little, we may find, as we begin to turn inward, be honest, really do the hard work of looking, becoming awake, becoming enlightened, revealing the insights that are there inside of us to be seen and to be known. We too sit under a Bodhi tree. It takes us a lot more than one night. And we too have revelation and revelation. And with each insight, with each new knowing, new piece of knowledge, something opens, something lifts, something becomes lighter within our being, within our heart, within our space, the space of our body, the space of our mind. And that lightning, we could say, is a very small taste of awakening, a very small taste of enlightenment. And then we walk the path. We do it again. Again. So that's really the thread of the teachings coming from the Buddha. What's the purpose of life? You can describe it in many different ways, but in essence, we can say it has to do with growing up. It has to do with knowledge. It has to do with using our time very wisely to learn what's the cause of suffering, what's the path. Now, is that path the same for everyone? No, of course not. And you've had these wonderful speakers here, and everybody has been saying the same thing. And Sarah said the same thing this morning, which is there's many purposes of life as there are people. There are as many paths as there are human beings. What is your path? Your life. What is my path? My life. One of the really beautiful teachings of the Buddha is that our path is not somewhere else. We didn't miss the boat, in other words. You may have made the choice when you were 20 to marry someone or not marry them, or you may have made the choice when you were 22 to become some profession and not some other profession, but that too is your path. The fact that you made that choice is not something to regret and look back on and say, well, my path was to be a doctor, but instead I became a lawyer, or my path was to be a lawyer, but instead I became a doctor. Your path was to do exactly what you've done. My path was to do exactly what I've done. I did and made only the choices I could have made at the time I made them. You did and made only the choices you were capable of making with the information you had at the time you made them. That's all. There's nothing to regret. It is only a question of how well do we deal moment by moment as we move forward with what comes to us, with what's the next step. There's no abstract right path. Oh, it's right to be this and wrong to be that. No, it's our life. It's our next breath. It's our next heartbeat. It's the next time we greet someone. It's the next time we pick up the phone and talk to someone. Or, luckily for us, soon see them outside in the street. It's the next time we either smile or say something mean-spirited to someone. That's all. That's the path. And if we say something mean-spirited, that's our suffering. Right there. That's my suffering, let alone what I've done to them. It's my suffering. That's what I have to look at. Okay, the time after, the time that I'm mean-spirited, maybe I'll smile. I want to smile. What's keeping me from smiling? Maybe it's the 5th time. Maybe I have to be mean-spirited 4 times and really feel my own suffering from that. And then the 5th time I say, I don't need to do that. It's not worth it. And then I give up that suffering. Well, there's always another one, so we don't have to worry too much that we're going to become saints too quickly, So it's moment by moment, step by step. We walk a path. We can't help but walk a path. We're alive. We're breathing. We're taking steps. We're moving our body. Our mind is thinking. Our path includes every thought that we have, every speech act that we make. Nothing we do is outside of our path. Nothing we do is outside of our life. I used to think when I was young, maybe you have this too, I used to wonder, when is my life going to start? When is my life going to start? And then at some point, I had this great realization. This is my life. This is it. That's it. And so walk it with beauty, walk it with ease, walk it with knowledge, walk it with wisdom, walk it with love, walk it with peace, with compassion. Any of those words are wonderfully good, but manifest those things. Don't just make it theoretical. My purpose is to be a good person. That's good, but it's too theoretical. My life is every single thing I do, I think, I say, everything I manifest in the world, what I write, what I leave behind, and what I don't leave behind. All of that is my life. It might be children, it might be a house, it might be a cat. All of that is my life. Every single bit of it can be done with beauty, with grace, with joy, or not. And when not, who suffers? I suffer. Can I learn from that? Is that suffering a teacher for me? Yes. That too is important. All right. That's how we learn a lot of things in life. We put our hand on the fire and we learn that it burns. Otherwise, it's so beautiful, it's so attractive. I'm going to, there's a fire there. Of course, I want to put my hand in it. But when I put my hand in it and it burns, and I say, okay, no, I'm not going to do that again. I've just learned something from that. I had to put my hand in it. It was how I learned. We go through life the same way. So in Buddhist teaching, it's not very necessary to review everything we've done and say, oh, we should have done or we shouldn't have done. We start from now. At every point is an enlightenment possibility. Every point is an opening. So what's the purpose of life? Well, it's to open every point. Now and now and now and now. Breathe in, breathe out. Open the heart. Will that lead to service and caring? Usually, yes, because what we discover as we go forward is that is what brings joy. That is what brings happiness. That is what heals our loneliness, heals our confusion, gives meaning to what we're doing. Tarting, I'm going to stop in a minute and ask for questions and stuff, but I just wanted to read one more thing. Tarting Rinpoche, who is my teacher, my Tibetan, I've been studying in the Tibetan tradition, Tibetan Buddhism, and my teacher who is, he is now 85. He lives in Northern California. He's been here in the United States since the late 1960s. He's the same age as the Dalai Lama. They're just a few months apart. And he was trained, very traditional training with many, many teachers himself in Tibet. I left Tibet in the 1950s when the Chinese were really coming into the country, and he was in Bhutan for a while, and then in India, and then came to the United States, came to Berkeley, and he has started a very large set of organizations in Mandala, working very quietly for 50 years now here. You can learn more about that in the future, but he's written many books, and that's really the point I wanted to make. Many, many books in English, many of which we teach at Dharma College. But this is a book called Keys of Knowledge, which he wrote a few years ago, Keys of Knowledge. And right at the start, he describes working with his students, some of his students, and he doesn't teach to the public anymore. He just has a small group of senior students that he works with. And he says, the essence of what I try to impart to my students is that the human mission, our true purpose here, is wholeness. Wholeness is never wholly for ourselves. For real wholeness is always communicated to others in spreading ripples of positive influence and deep appreciation. I do not believe this mission is only for my own students. It awaits all of us sentient beings as we begin to understand ourselves and transform our experience. So that's really the gist of what I have to say about purpose. If we work toward wholeness for ourselves, integrating our knowledge with our hearts, our bodies, and our minds, understanding our own suffering, what leads to it, and what heals it. And if we can spread our inner knowing in ripples to others as we simply go about our life, whatever our life is, wherever we are, whatever age we are, we're constantly interacting with the world. We always have an opportunity to spread joy or openness or inner peace, and we always have the opportunity to learn from the times when we don't, when we're irritated or impatient or angry. We always have the opportunity to say to ourselves, that's my suffering. I don't want that anymore. So whatever our life is, wherever we are, whatever we're doing, we are walking a path. We are never off our path. And we can do it well. We can learn from it. And hopefully that way, little by little, we awaken and transform our experience. That's how the world changes, bit by bit, person by person, moment by moment. So that's what I have to say, and I'd be very happy to have comments or questions or anything to hear from all of you who have been so patiently listening for this time.
Thank you so much, Robin. Your presentation feels so hopeful, so whole. It seems easy to reach the path of non-suffering, but do we reach such a place of non-suffering? If one is enlightened, then does that mean that one doesn't suffer?
Mhm, 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 mhm. Well, let me ask you something, Sarah. When your heart is really open and full, I don't know, think about everybody for a moment. Just think about a time, a moment when your heart was very open, very full, very caring, very peaceful. Maybe you were staring at a sunset, and maybe you were with a new grandchild. Whatever the situation, it doesn't really matter what triggered it. But in that moment, everybody have a really positive moment that you can reach back to and just feel it within you. In that moment, there is no suffering. When we look at the human vehicle of body and mind and our communication apparatus, we see that there are certain states, certain conditions that can't exist side by side. So it's very interesting, but try to think back. Can you be very peaceful and very angry at the same time? Really, you can't. Can you be very loving and very angry in the exact same moment? Really, you can't. So when you have those moments of inner peace, you're not suffering. Now, if you're saying, as most of us say, but I can't imagine having those moments all the time, and I say to you, well, it's a path. And so just one at a time, one moment, and then more moments, and then more moments, and then more moments. And say, if I am offered some really delicious food to eat on the one hand, on my right side, and then I'm offered some really smelly, crummy garbage on the other hand, and I taste the good food and I feel really good from it, and I taste the garbage food and I get sick from it. After a while, I'm going to learn not to take the garbage, but just to take the good food. Maybe 2 or 3 times I might make the mistake, but we have this amazing capacity to learn, to know, to understand. And that capacity just, it's very natural. It's our birthright. So if I do it enough, I'm going to heal myself. And then yes, we will put an end to some forms, at least, of our own inner suffering.
Thank you. Now it's time for any of you to ask Robin a question, make a statement of your own path, point out what she's shared that has meaning to you. So the best way to do that is probably to raise your hand, and hopefully I see you or one of the committee sees you and calls on you. And it's okay to have moments of quiet while we think about what we'd like to say or comment on or ask a question about.
Everyone can unmute themselves if you'd like to ask a question. Unmute yourself and then either start talking or take your turn to start talking and ask a question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I find this amazing with what the conclusions I've come to the same way. And I had written something as a prologue to a lot of writing I'm trying to get into and so forth. And I think that goes back to that same story you said about the Buddha and the child that was, or being totally in the fancy place and so forth and not seeing people outside of it. And I remember, this is a classic. I don't quite remember where I got it from, but the child was maybe teenager or something like that, and he was kept in this wonderful place, but he never saw how the people really lived. Maybe that was the Buddha himself, I'm not sure. So he had someone drove around in the chariot to show him the life. And one thing he came across of was a man who was very old. And he says, "What's that?" And they said, "Oh, that's aging." And he knew nothing about it, of course. And then the next one was someone who was very sick. And again, he had to say that's what that is. And then the third was dying. And when he came back to his father or the Buddha, whoever it was, he said how horrible life was out there. And the Buddha's message to him was that all these things happen. You can't do anything about aging. Everybody goes there, or they die, don't get there. Everyone has illness, everyone has death. And he says these are all inevitable, and you can inevitable. I'm getting the background. Anyway, so these are things to just accept and realize there's not anything you can do about them. And also that you cannot predict the future, and that everything changes over time. So don't sweat it. Don't worry about all those things because they're inevitable. Yes, you can do things and so forth, but don't. But I found that very true.
Thank you, Robert. Robin, do you have a comment to Robert's story? It sounds like the Buddha, doesn't it?
Yes, it does sound like the Buddha, but it sounds like all of us. How much of the time do we spend worrying about things that over which we have absolutely no control? I was thinking about this pandemic this morning, and we couldn't stop it. We just couldn't stop it. But what could we do? We could learn how to make decisions and deal with it. We could learn how to wear a mask or choose not to wear a mask. We could learn how to stay inside. We could learn to use Zoom, even though some of us thought we could never use the internet in this way. We were able to find ways through it. We should be so proud of ourselves right now. We really should be. We should be so happy and so proud of ourselves. Yes, a lot of people didn't do that, and we should send them our best blessings and our most caring, and whatever money we can afford to send, and all of those things, absolutely. But we also deserve to be proud of ourselves. We understood what we could handle and what we couldn't handle, what we could stop and what we couldn't stop. And we've come through it. We were very resilient. Reminds me of the people in London during World War II. I've been reading a lot about that and the bombing and how resilient human beings can be when they really understand what they can do and what they can't do for each other. We use that wisdom just bit by bit, just as Robert was saying. And we can't stop aging, but we can keep using our minds. We can keep sending our prayers out no matter what age we are. We can smile at the nurse who's taking care of us instead of being snappish and mean-spirited. There are many, many things always that we can do, even though we can't stop the body from aging or aging. So we do what we can.
Thank you, Robin. Channing, you wanted to say something.
Hi, Robin.
Hi, Channing.
It's so good to see you. I'm sorry I haven't been in any of your classes, but I'm always interested. And as you know, I studied Buddhism as a part of an interfaith studies program in Berkeley. And I'm really interested in kind of the scope of Buddhism in terms of what I love about it is it starts within oneself. It doesn't start at the macro level, it starts at the micro level. And the constant focus is on growth within ourselves and changing ourselves. And so I'm just wondering, does Buddhism have any kind of a vision or any thought process about how to bring peace in the world? Does it start from all of us changing individually? Or, you know, is there a vision for creating peace in the world?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really a wonderful question. Yes, there's a vision of creating peace in the world, but yes, it also requires, absolutely requires an inner understanding of how we are all united, how we are all connected, how our breathing and our breath, what I breathe now, Channing may be breathing 5 minutes from now in another part of Rossmore, how we're, my suffering is similar to your suffering, how we've all been through it. We all know it. We all care about our families. We all want happiness. We all want our children to be happy. We all grieve when we lose somebody. We're all hungry when we don't have enough food. So if we can really feel and understand our own being, then from that we understand what everyone around the table is thinking, what the Republicans are feeling, as well as what Democrats are feeling. You know, this business of blue states and red states and this and that and you know, mine and yours, it's artificial. It's artificial. Yes, we have different ideas about how to go about solving different problems, but if we don't learn to talk to each other, if we don't learn to start with a common basis, I'm just a human being here, you're just a human being here, I have a family, you have a family, I care about my family, you care about your family, etc., etc. So yes, there's a vision of a world at peace, a world full of caring, a world where people don't need to keep grasping at external things, and because it's our inner life that's so rich. It's our inner life that's abundant with opportunity and with potentiality. If we can feel that, really feel that, we can speak to other people and we can communicate. And if we can communicate, if we can really understand each other, then we can make a world of peace. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gloria?
You're muted, Gloria.
It's hard to poke it. I got it. Anyway, first of all, I really want to thank you for your words. It just seems to me lately, first of all, my path is Ananda, and Ananda says that it is the search for your inner self with the big S. The purpose of this life is to find yourself, to know yourself, feel the throb of the ocean of God's presence in your heart. But as that, I think you said, and as I've seen, there's theory and there's thought, but the Buddhist that I just discovered lately, the walking meditation, that I never did anything so hard, is to so slowly put one foot in front of another and lift up one heel and move it and keep my balance and put it down again. And I think what you said today, that really how you summed up the end to suffering and is to walk your path by the choices you make and by your awareness, is not only how to end your own suffering, but to end the suffering of the world. So by that, would you really sort of sum it up to say Buddhism really teaches you to go within and meditate and be at peace within yourself, and it will spread?
You know, that's a beautiful way of putting it. But sometimes we can't meditate. We're too agitated.
Right.
And it is hard. I mean, walking meditation is one of the hardest things to learn how to do. I'm so interested that you just started doing that.
It's really hard, really, really hard.
Slowing down, slowing our thoughts, slowing our bodies, slowing our perception, all of that. But that's just one path and one possibility and one way. And what we need to do really is just manifest. So I guess I just really want to say, whatever you can do. If you can't meditate, that's okay. Think a positive thought, send a wish for world healing, whatever you can do. If you can, slow down, walk more slowly, notice the sound of the birds, smell the beautiful flowers. This is literally true. This is so helpful. Feel beauty. Experience. How much time do we have? Not so much time. So always manifest. Don't keep it theoretical. Make it happen within you, outside of you, any way you can. If you can meditate, it speeds things up, and it's very, very good. It's very healing. But I know from experience, from having been a teacher in this area for 20 years now, not everybody can do that. And I don't want anybody walking away saying, well, I can't. I just can't. Because I can.
Well, what I just noticed is I have meditated for years, maybe not as regularly as I wish to, but I had never, it always has been a sitting meditation. I was so shocked that I couldn't keep my balance the slower I went, and how difficult it was. And I realized how much momentum carried me. And I think that goes into so many areas besides walking. It goes into your mind. The momentum of life carries you around and takes your awareness. So I am really in awe of the Buddhist simplicity. So anyway, that's all I have to say.
Well, thank you. That's really nice. We teach about the mind at Dharma College. And our Rinpoche has written that mind is really the king, or you could say the queen, the king or the queen. And that is, the mind really leads us forward, you know. And so we if we can start there, if we can go straight directly to mind, how its whole momentum, it's the quickness of thought. It's not just what we're thinking. It's the movement and how fast it is, and how erratic it is, and how we get out of focus. And so we can do so many things. There's just like a million practices, not just sitting and not just walking meditation, but all kinds of practices with sound and with sight and vision, and to bring our whole body, our whole manifestation, our whole mind into a more peaceful place, a richer place, a more beautiful place. And from that, we have so much more to give to others. So yeah, it's a journey.
We have another question, Robin, on the chat from Susan. She said, wonderful presentation. A quick question. When can you call yourself a Buddhist?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. I tend to go the other way and say I am not a Buddhist because I don't like that ist at the end. You know, I like to say an ist makes you into something and then you're not something else. But the traditional way of talking about that is students of the Buddha take refuge. And that's how you become part of the Sangha or part of the group of students of the Buddha. You take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And it's a very simple statement of refuge is a funny word, you know, it's not a very up-to-date modern word in our vocabulary. But essentially you say, no, I give my heart and my teachings to the Buddha, and I will follow. I will come for refuge when I need healing, when I need calming, when I need help, when I need teaching, I will find it in the Buddhist teachings. That's really what you have to do. And that's all you have to do. But to do it authentically, you have to know what you're talking about. And you really have to know a little bit about the Buddhist teachings and make sure that you want to go there for refuge. I'm not going to go to someone else for refuge. I'm not going to go to a different teacher. I'm not going to go to drugs or alcohol or food. I'm going to go to the Buddhist teachings and look for my answers there. So that's the official way of becoming a Buddhist. But you should always take some classes first, study first, read books first, make sure that you feel that that's the right, appropriate thing to do.
Thank you. Letting people have some space, time. Please feel free to make a comment.
Okay.
Robert, let's see if there's anybody else that hasn't talked, and then we'll come back to you. Is there anybody else that would like to make a comment or ask a question? Okay, Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things that appeals to me about Buddha so much is it's all about your own thing that you deal with. What I find wrong, what I find problems in all the different religions and things and so forth, they have this dogma that you've got to subscribe to, like a membership card and so forth. And I'm very uncomfortable with that, all the things that are done in names of religion and so forth are some of the worst killing things and so forth there are. But I like that fact that you're responsible for yourself. And in my own case, there are things I can't do anything about. And okay, so put that away and do what you can and the things you can get around it. The slight thing to this also, I was giving a deposition in a jury trial, and they kept trying to find out why this person had died and so forth. And one of my comments was to say, well, they have everyone eventually dies, and it's not necessarily somebody's fault, because especially in that jury situation and so forth, they're all looking for a reason. And they're missing the point.
Thank you. Robin?
Well, on that, you know, we are living, we are imperfect beings, and we try the best we can within our systems to set up institutions that solve problems, you know, and so the legal system tries to solve many problems for which it is incapable, for which it really doesn't have it doesn't really have the resources, and it doesn't really have the wisdom, but there it is. What else do we have, you know? So we go at it. So in the legal system, there needs to be a single cause. There needs to be a single person responsible. We need to decide guilt or innocence, and maybe that whole system is useless, and we could think of a better one. But until we think of a better one, that seems to be how it operates. So it's very different than what we're talking about. Our freedom as individuals is not to do that, not to have to do that. We don't have to be judge and jury. We don't have to find a single cause. There is no single cause. And, you know, in a way, chaos theory now is really caught up with all of this. You could say the little butterfly that flaps its wings over here causes the tides to change, you know, thousands of miles away. We're so interconnected. Everything causes everything else if you really travel from moment to moment to moment. If you could really map time, and you could really map space, and you could really map movement, we're all, I do this and someone else on the other side of the world is going to do that. You know, there's no real way of separating ourselves out from the space around us, from our environment. We're learning this the hard way in terms of environmental issues, in terms of everything else. But I mean, this is really at the heart of Buddha's awakening, is that there's this basic interconnection. When Tartang Rinpoche says wholeness is within a human being, but wholeness extends beyond, way beyond just one individual. We are a wholeness. We already are. And so discovering that, learning how to work with that, that's part of the path that we walk. And, you know, but it's not even a choice. We are already part of a whole environment. And so we have to learn how we want it to be, and go about bit by bit, slow walking, as hard as it is to keep our balance when we slow down. It's beautiful when we can do that. So thank you, everyone. If there are there more?
Well, I think there are more questions. It's just taking time sometimes for people to think of questions, but also encouraging individuals sharing of where you are at and what has created you to come out of your suffering. All of us have suffered. And has that suffering helped you? How has it helped you? Suffering is a huge topic. And I really appreciated the Four Noble Truths, beginning with suffering and the cause of suffering and how to move beyond suffering. Its simplicity is very, very appealing. So if nobody else has, oh yeah, Reza, go ahead. I saw your hand. Yeah.
Yes, hello to everybody. It is a joy to be here. And Robin's teaching's been enlightening and educational on my part. I just wanted to, since there is time, to mention that in directions of the teachings, suffering has been a very helpful teacher in a sense for me. When I look back into my life and the experiences that I have, for example, like in my divorce, it just put me into circumstances that I wasn't able to sleep, I wasn't able to eat, and I was just going insane. And, I just was observing myself to going through this suffering to that extent. And it was just me, a couple of friends that I have. But, looking back at it, I see how a great teacher he was. It literally took me out of being a child and made me a lot more mature. Look at every individual difference, look at myself and see how weak I was. And while I thought I was such an enormous, bold, and so on and so on and so on person. So, this suffering is an enormous teacher to educate everyone into directions of the wholeness, as the teachings of Miss Robin is. And my other observation has been, I have a certain extent of capacity to learn. And that's, let's say books and interactions with others and my experiences. And that's been great. It has been great. But the other element that really helped me out through this journey I have been going through is to have a teacher, to find a spiritual teacher. And so that he has gone through this journey and he's different than what I am. I have a certain capacity, but I could see him a lot more capacity, a lot more stronger and, wholeness, in any aspect kind of way I have observed. I just wanted to address the question, how important is that role of a teacher in each individual's life from Robin in Buddhism?
Reza, that's a wonderful question. And also I want to thank you for sharing what you shared about suffering and how you learned what a teaching that it is. And maybe that inspired you to find a teacher. And having a teacher is very, very important within Buddhism and Buddhist practice generally. It's very extremely important in the Tibetan tradition. And you've heard the term Lama, which really just means teacher. But when you find a teacher, you are invited to spend some time considering whether you really want to commit to this teacher or not. And but when you decide to commit to the teacher, then you stay very loyal. And loyalty is very important to the teacher, because otherwise, as soon as the teacher tells you to do something that you don't want to do, you're going to be out the door. And that just pushes you right back into your own, making your own mistakes again. You can still learn that way, but it's a slow way. You know, when we learn by making mistakes constantly, it's a slower way of learning. And it also is painful. I was talking about putting your hand in the fire, and we can keep putting our hands in the fire, but it hurts, you know, and it's slow. And it's a little easier if you're lucky enough to find a teacher who can help you make a more positive journey and use the teachings in a more slightly faster, more productive way of moving forward. So yes, having a teacher can be very, very helpful, but not everybody will find a teacher necessarily or wants to find a teacher, a single teacher. Sometimes you can have several teachers, one at a time. But the important thing is when you do find a teacher, to not reject what the teacher tells you, because the teacher is going to be very honest with you, more honest than any of your friends, more honest than your spouse. And sometimes that can be hurtful, you know, or that can feel, your ego can feel bruised. But a teacher who's a good teacher can also help you learn to run up the path and in much more quickly and joyfully than you otherwise would do it yourself. So it's very important. If you find one, that's wonderful. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I've heard that there's a difference between suffering and pain. You know, pain is inevitable, but suffering isn't. Now, I find that really curious because it doesn't quite go along with what Buddhism says. Buddhism says that suffering, everybody suffers. And I guess one could say everybody has pain. But do you think that there's a distinction between you don't have to suffer? Maybe some people suffer less than other people. And why is that?
Well, I'm really flattered that you're asking me such important questions, and I'll just do my best here. Buddhism doesn't really distinguish between suffering and pain in that way. So those are not separate definitions. In fact, one of the aspects of suffering is considered the suffering of suffering is pain or illness, old age, and death. Those are considered the suffering of suffering. They're all different levels of, all different ways of categorizing things. But again, I want to say this is good. We do this, we analyze things, we give definitions, but in the end, we know in our hearts what's painful, what pain is. Are we suffering? Are we just uncomfortable? It doesn't matter what word you use, really. What matters is, you know, where your feelings are, where your heart is, what's going on. There are stories of Tibetan masters who have had surgery without any anesthesia because they don't feel pain, Sarah. They are able to use their minds in a way that opens the space of their being beyond the smallness of pain. And we can't imagine that. And please don't try it. So for them, pain, there is no pain on that level because they can use their perception in their mind in ways that we can't imagine. We just aren't trained to do that. There's a whole series of wonderful books and stories about people in Tibet going out into the, there's a whole practice of going out into the freezing cold without any clothes on and generating inner heat and actually sweating, being warm. And we think, oh, those stories must be made up, but they're not made up. They truly are a different way of using our inner resources. So I can't define pain, separate out pain and suffering and pain. That's not in my experience. They're pretty much the same. When I say I'm suffering, I know that I have some emotional pain. And when I have physical pain, I sure feel like I'm suffering. So I don't know, but I do know that bit by bit, certain kinds of experiences can shift and open. And even when we're having physical pain, we cannot let it overwhelm us, if you know what I mean. We can understand, okay, this really hurts, this is painful, this is here for now, but in a week, I'm not going to feel this anymore. And just knowing that deep in our hearts might make it better, make it not quite so intense. Mm-hmm. Or I have this pain, but I still can laugh about something at the next minute. And then I'll go back to feeling the pain. So I don't have to feel it every single second. So we do what we can. We work as we can.
Thank you. Well, we've pretty much come to the time limit. And I just want to say, I so much appreciate, Robin, your simple presentation on the Four Noble Truths. I think for the first time, I've understood them. I've always heard about them. And I now understand that we have a capacity to learn, to be self-reflective, to use our minds, as you say, to use our minds, and I would think that would mean our thoughts. We can become aware of our thoughts. I have a delete button, and when there's a thought that comes through me that is, a thought that does not do me any good, I can push delete. And I give all of you a delete button if you want. You can have it. It's very helpful to be aware of the thoughts that can cause suffering and pain, and to bring in the mind. I appreciate that very much. I think that we could probably stay here and go on for a long time as we get deeper and deeper and people open more. However, time is an aspect in everything, and I just want to tell you how much I appreciate your presentation, your expertise in gentleness and teaching has really been an opening to me. I just want to go out and smell the flowers and feel the wind. I want to be present. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. And thank you so much for inviting me, Sarah, and thank all of you and all of the speakers who've come before, all of the speakers who will come after. This is such an important and valuable thing to do, and I really appreciate it. And thank you again. Good.
Okay, so Dan Sturdivant, who's here with us today, will be our next presenter, representing, you're a Methodist minister, Dan. So in July, I think it's July 19th.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. By that time, we'll probably figure out what the real date is. I look forward to hearing you, and look forward to welcoming all of you back, and I'll send out a notice. And once again, Will, thank you. Thank you so much for hosting our Zoom. Very much appreciated.
Yes, thanks, Will. Thank you, Robin. And I hope you all will come. I think most of the speakers have said, I may not be the best representative of the tradition of which I'm about to speak. I can only speak from my own perspective. I am, among many of my colleagues, proudly a heretic. So perhaps the perspective that I have on Christianity will be, well, it might be offensive to you, but it also might be very, very liberating and welcome.
Good.
I like it, so I hope you come.
Bring forth the heretics. They
exactly
make us think, and maybe that causes some suffering for some of us. But once again, thank you all, and we'll see you in a month if you're around. Thank
And I
you.
hope you are. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.